Hello and welcome to Thoughts Per Episode, Danny Phantom Edition. When I grew up as a kid, wait, hang on, that sounds weird. When I was growing up, I wasn't a comic book kid, I was a cartoons kid. I didn't grow up with comic books, I discovered them in my 20s. So, while, I enjoyed the Spider-Man movies and I watched the Batman cartoon, I didn't strictly have all traditional superheroes. I think I would consider Danny Phantom as one of my main superheroes that I liked. If you could call him a superhero. As far as I remember, he's not really portrayed as one, but I've basically just got Paramount Plus because I want to watch Star Trek and not give Netflix extra money for killing family sharing. And I was like, Paramount Plus isn't a very good service, but it does have a lot of my childhood on here through Nickelodeon, so we're going to watch through Danny Phantom for the first time in, oh god, I want to say about 15 years, and I'm going to let you know what it's like from an adult perspective. I don't know if we're going to do all of season 1 in this video. You probably already know. We might just do the first half. We'll see how it goes. I don't know how much there's going to be to say about this show. Episode 1. Life as a high school freshman can be tough, but even tougher when you're trying to control your new superhero ghost powers. So, Butch Hartman might be a little crazy these days, and there's some controversies about him tracing art and saying prayers heal illness and all of these fun things, but I have to admit, no matter where it comes from, I do enjoy Danny Phantom's jagged kind of art style. You know, the same art style that you get from Very Odd Parents. It's just nice to look at. It's fun to watch. It's aged pretty decently, in my opinion. This episode focuses on, first of all, I think it's a pretty decent first episode in the fact that it's definitely made to be watched in any order, as cartoons are, but it's also very much a first episode in that Danny hasn't really got the grip on his powers. I don't know if this continues, I think it might, but he, loses ghost mode a couple of times in the middle of fights, and he doesn't see, attacks coming and stuff like that. And then later in the episode when he's fighting off against the, I forget what she's called, but the ghost lady, the meat ghost lady, they do mention that, oh hey, he is getting better at fighting. But the origin story, of course, is in the intro, which plays in every single episode, so it's not like we're getting an origin story as part of the main story here. The main kind of story beyond that is about Sam wants everyone to be vegetarian, and Tucker loves meat and wants everyone to eat meat. And Sam gets the menu changed, and the oh my god, what are they called? Dinner ladies? I guess we call them dinner ladies. I don't know what they're called in America. But there's a ghost dinner lady who comes through because Sam changed the menu, and nobody changes the menu. That brings me to the humor. I can't say I ever really laughed out loud. I think I did as a kid, and I think this humor really landed with me as a kid. But this is definitely a kid's show, and watching it as an adult, it is entertaining, but I'm not exactly laughing out loud. It's also, I feel like it's aged a little bit, but there are still some things that made me laugh. Also, one thing that stood out to me is at one point they go and find where the school has been hiding all of the meat, and it's just this giant warehouse with crates full of meat, and I'm like, aren't you supposed to refrigerate that stuff? And why do you have so much of it? So sometimes the humor is found in more environmental areas, and I don't even know whether it's intended to be or not. I like Danny's parents as like these ghost hunting maniacs. It's a very good fit for like, you can hear the elevator pitch, right? Of like, what about this superhero kid who's got ghost powers and he has to hide his identity, but his parents are ghost hunters. And then for the first episode, they think that his sister is secretly a ghost, but they never ever think that Danny is going to be the ghost, and that's going to play with kids going, oh my god, they don't even know. You've got that dramatic irony going on of a superhero secret identity. Also, one more note, their teacher, the bald guy whose name I've forgotten, in the young adult series Cirque du Freak, there's a teacher called Mr. Dalton, who I always pictured as this guy. I always pictured him looking like this guy and sounding like this guy. So I've got this weird, like, double kind of nostalgia going on with this character. Oh, and Dash, the bully, is just a straight up rip-off of Flash, Spider-Man's school bully. I think it's meant to be, of reference at least, but I never caught that as a kid. Probably because Flash was never in the Spider-Man movies I watched as a kid, to be perfectly honest. The conflict of meat eating versus vegetarianism never actually reaches a conclusion. The episode never actually tries to make a stance one way or the other, but I'm not surprised that it chose that as one of its topics, because I remember being a kid around that time and children's diets was something that was very heavily discussed, at least here in the UK. I always remember seeing that grass on a bun and thinking it looked weirdly tasty. I don't know, something about the way it's drawn. Anyway, that was episode 1, I guess. It was enjoyable, but, you know, not thrilling because it's a kids show. Go figure. Oh, I almost forgot as well, at one point when everything's kicking off in the finale of the episode, Sam and Tucker hug Danny so that nobody sees him turn into a ghost and fly away. But I mean, that's not much of a cover, is it? If if anyone was watching that, they wouldn't suddenly go, oh, that's weird, Danny disappeared and this ghost appeared. I can't put 2 and 2 together. Episode 2, I can't bring the blurbs up after I'm done watching the episodes because Paramount Plus is weird. But this is the episode where Danny finds a ghost amulet which turns people into ghost dragons, which is possessed by the angriest thought of the person who's wearing the amulet, and also there's a school dance. Pretty clever second episode to establish relationships of the trio of friends and how Danny and Sam are definitely just friends and definitely don't have feelings for each other, and this will definitely never come up again. Danny somehow stumbles his way into getting Paulina to go to the dance with him, but he also accidentally stumbles his way into giving her the ghost amulet, forgetting that it's the ghost amulet, and shenanigans ensue. One of my favourite things about this episode is that Danny learns that he can possess people as a ghost, and he immediately uses this for ethically fucked reasons to pursue his own needs. Spider-Man with responsibilities, he is not. Like, he literally possesses his dad for like what must have been at least an hour of his life to go to this parent-teacher meeting about his pants falling down, just so that he would be spared the embarrassment of his dad having to go and find out about this. This isn't to do with revealing his secret identity, this is just teenage angst. I actually really like how Sam's character is portrayed in this episode. Like, she's clearly a little bit jealous about Danny asking Paulina out to the dance and saying things about getting tongue-tied around pretty girls, and she's like, oh, so I'm not a pretty girl. And I don't know, like, I mean, spoilers, if you haven't watched Danny Phantom, the end of this entire show ends with the two of them getting together, and I think it's a really sweet, wholesome romance that you don't see a lot of in kids' animated shows, and it's something I like about this show in general, how that progresses. So it's nice to see the beginnings of that seeded here. It's also a pretty wholesome moment when Danny makes Tucker ask her out to go to the dance so that they would be there to assist him with the various hijinks which are about to ensue, and he's like, I don't want to ask her out of a dance, and then she comes out in a dress and he's like, oh, actually, you know what, yeah, okay. The whole dance thing where the protagonist has to juggle multiple situations and hide his secret identity and stuff, I can't think of any exact examples, but it's very tropey. You know, Danny has to balance the dragon ghost situation as well as his dad not realizing where he is situation at the same time, and it's very I don't know, just teenage drama. But it works. I think I had more fun with this episode than I did with the previous episode, and oh my god, we're nearly 8 minutes in already. I need to shut up and hurry up and get through some more episodes. Oh, also, I'm pretty sure Tucker asks Valerie out, who is a returning character later on and ends up being Danny's girlfriend for a while. I don't know, that's a fringe memory I have, it could be wrong. Oh, but yeah, before we go, Danny and Sam have a little dance at the end of the episode, and it's super cute. Episode 3, One of a Kind. When Danny's after-school ghost activities cause his already mediocre grades to slip, he calls upon his friends Sam and Tucker to help him efficiently manage his time. This episode introduces Skulker, who's a bit like Craven the Hunter, but much, much more interesting. I hate Craven the Hunter, he's so dumb. Now, he's a ghost who hunts ghosts. He hunts rare, weird types of ghosts or whatever, and it's the first mention of Ghost World as well, which is where he lives, and he's trying to take Danny back to ghost world to keep him in a cage, which also leads into the other thing of this episode's story, which is the purple-back gorilla called Samson, that's the one, I didn't have to check my notes, who also exists in a cage, who Sam very recklessly just lets out of a cage at one point when she's got the opportunity to, which presents a whole bunch of new problems. Well done, Sam. Once again, the show brings up this issue of, like, is it right to keep animals in zoos, and doesn't do anything with it, just likes to have it as a character trait that Sam is angry about. This episode also sees the introduction of the box ghost, who I completely forgot about. I love that guy. While watching Danny Fenton today, I came up with 2 observations. One, he has a very long, thin neck. It's kind of weird. And in fact, a lot of the characters in this show do. And 2, I think he gets a logo on his chest at some point. He gets like a D logo, but it's not here yet, and it's weird seeing him without it, because I'm pretty sure he gets it kind of early on. Maybe next episode? I don't know. At one point, Danny is looking at a report that he has written, which has received a D, and the show looks at it quickly and then cuts away from it. And I was curious, because this was back in a day when you could not pause telly, right? And I was like, what does it actually say? And I did not write down everything that was on this paper because it would have taken me a long time. But the first kind of thing on there says something along the lines of anti-disestablishment un amis is the gui illis on tial long with what the in ek ul uwu. And that's weird because it's an amalgamation of both real words and gobbledygook. So, I mean, I think there's a term for it, isn't there? Of just like the name for gobbledygook text that you put in things which are meant to look like actual writing, but you're not supposed to pay attention to. But I was hoping there would be some Easter eggs in there, and there were not. At one point, Skulker tracks Danny back to his house and punches him through the floorboards down onto the kitchen table, and Danny's parents put this down to ghost rats. This is meant to be a family of geniuses, as mentioned in this very episode. One thing I like is that Skulker steals Tucker's PDA, and he, mashes it into his wrist, and obviously it just immediately becomes compatible with all of his tech, because that's how tech works in cartoons. And suddenly it can sprout a gun, because I guess that was inside the PDA all along, and it can also sprout a jetpack and send him flying off to different places. When Tucker pulls out a second PDA, I was like, wait, he has 2 of those, but then the show was like, wait, you have 2 of those? I was like, okay. I'm glad they acknowledged that as well. Because some things, they just do cartoon logic and try not to have you think about it. And then other things, they play on that and make jokes about it. So it's interesting to see what gets acknowledged and what doesn't. Also, it is kind of like legitimately funny when they see Skulker and he keeps like getting these PDA messages and it keeps sending him off to go and do things relating to researching the purple-back gorilla. I mean, it wears off after a few times, but it was funny the first few times. It had me chuckling. And also the reveal at the end of the episode where they take off Skulker's, mechanical armor, and you see that he's just a tiny little ghost dude with a big, ego complex. That is something I legitimately did not remember about Skulker, and I love it. I think it's great. Now, interestingly, while I haven't seen most of Danny Phantom for years, literally over a decade, I have seen this episode a few years ago because I wanted to look up where to watch Danny Phantom, and this was before the days of Paramount Plus. It was pretty much, it was nowhere to be found, and I found a website of legitimate questionability, and I watched this episode there, and it was not very good quality, and I did not continue to watch it. But I mean, I was like, oh, I've seen this episode recently, but not really recently, more like a few years ago. But there you go, fun fact. Okay, moving on to the next episode. Season 1, Episode 4, Attack of the Killer Garage. Danny needs quick cash to buy cool clothes for his first A-list homecoming party at football jock Dash Baxter's house. That was difficult to say if you could not tell. In this episode, Dash asks Danny's sister out to a party, and she says she'll only go if he invites Danny too, and then she stands him up. What a good sister. She's kind of a underserved character in the show, but I really like her. She's meant to be like this snooty, stuck-up person who is like an armchair psychiatrist kind of a thing, but I really like her. I did like how Danny lost control of his powers again for a brief second when he realised that Dash was in his kitchen. It shows that he still has some growing pains in that area. Also, Dash calls him... Dash calls him Twinkie. In this episode, we are introduced to Technus, Ghost Master of Science and Electrical Technology. He gives himself many different titles throughout the course of the episode, but I did not write them down. Also, there's a running joke where Danny's like, no, you're not gonna steal a bunch of technology and use it to take over the world. And he's like, that's a great idea. You should be like a, what do they call it? Careers advisor, I think he says. And then again, he gives them an idea later on in the episode as well. It's pretty funny. Anyway, the idea is that Danny sells a bunch of his dad's stuff without his dad's knowledge because unethical Danny strikes again, so that he can afford to pay for the clothes, which Dash is very clearly lying to him about needing to attend this party. And when he does get to the party, by the way, they're all wearing the clothes that he, Sam, and Tucker wear, which is just, that's just bullying. That's just bullying on an unprecedented school year-wide level. Danny has this line where he's like, man, I wish Sam and Tucker were here. It's lonely being popular. I'm like, I don't think you're really popular, Danny. I don't think that's how that works. But also, yes, for other reasons, it probably is lonely being popular. I wouldn't know. In this episode, we learn that Sam is loaded. There you go, that's her character trait. She's rich. I don't know if that ever comes up again, but I'm learning that there's a lot about this show that I do not remember. Oh, at one point, Danny is on his little electrical scooter on the way to the party, and he gets attacked by this ghost-possessed razor, and he gets into a battle with it and all by himself yells, "I'm going ghost," which is just kind of lame. I mean, as far as catchphrases go, "I'm going ghost" isn't the most cool catchphrase out there. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's better than Green Lantern's entire spiel, but to say it to yourself when no one's there to hear it, that's just lame. Buddy, maybe you deserve to get bullied. No, I'm joking. Oh my god, and Danny in his popular clothes with like the baggy jeans and the weird like golfer's hat they've got going on, or the tennis hat, I forget what it's called. Yeah, he looks doofy as heck. Also, is unexplainable collateral damage going to become a theme in this series? Because Dash walks into his bedroom and I guess rightfully assumes that Danny wrecked it because that was where he had his fight with Technus in his computer mecha state. And so the bedroom gets trashed and Dash assumes Danny did it, but there's no retribution for it. Like, I would be terrified of trashing a bully's room because what the hell is the bully gonna do to you after school? Whereas in this show, I feel like Danny plays more tricks on Dash than Dash does on Danny. At least so far. Maybe that'll change. Anyway, they defeat Technus by realizing that because he's updated to the latest version of Windows, I mean Portal, they can hack him because there's always a massive security gap in the latest version of Portal, which is clearly a dig at Microsoft. We're using floppy disks, by the way. I forgot to mention that. This is in the era of floppy disks. If you don't know what a floppy disk is, you're too young to be watching my videos. Please call your nearest babysitter and have them child mind you. Please don't tell me you're an adult because I will fall down and cry. Episode 5, Splitting Images. After a series of humiliating run-ins with Dash, the school bully, Danny uses his powers to get revenge. Oh boy, it's what I was literally just talking about. So yeah, this episode is all about how Danny abuses his powers to counter-bully, basically, and Sam pretty much is the only person in the beginning who's like, maybe you shouldn't be using your powers that way? I'll be interested to see if they remember to write Danny in a way in future episodes to not just immediately take ghostly revenge on Dash when Dash is being a bastard. But before that, at the very start of the episode, we've got Sam's latest woke agenda. I like Sam, okay? I like her activism, she's great. But her latest cause is frog rights, and I'm down with that. She doesn't think people should be dissecting frogs in school. And you know what? If they're living frogs, no, save the frogs. And she has like these mechanical robot frogs, which she's going to use as replacements, which A, doesn't seem like it would be very helpful with the frog biology curriculum, and B, where did she get mechanical frogs? Maybe she asked Danny's mum. Maybe she was like, hey, can you help me make some robot frogs for a school project? Because I feel like she'd be able to. Also, the box ghost returns for literally no reason. He just shows up and yells about being the box ghost, and he comes again at the end of the episode again and yells about being the box ghost again, and he's the box ghost. He's gonna show up a lot, I think. Oh yeah, and this whole episode is brought on by the fact, oh actually yeah, that's why the box ghost exists at the start of this episode, because he punches Danny into a box of female props, and Danny somehow ends up being dressed by those props, and he's wearing female clothing. Oh no. And also he's got like blusher on. I'm like, how did you fall into like perfectly applied blusher? Okay, Danny, I think you were experimenting back there, buddy. But of course, this prompts a bunch of bullying, and that's what sets off the whole point of the episode. And we meet Poindexter. The ghost villain of the episode is Poindexter, and he is a ghost from the 50s who got bullied a lot. And he sees Danny doing some counter-bullying, and he thinks that Danny is the bully, thereby solidifying Sam's protests about how Danny is treating Dash and the other bullies. And so he stuffs Danny into his locker and sends him to the spirit world, which is this depiction of the 1950s and how Poindexter lived his life. He steals Danny's body, and Danny ends up looking like Poindexter in the alternate 1950s universe. Poindexter then does villainous acts such as, checks notes, buying everyone diet soda and playing football with them. Meanwhile, Danny sees what it seems to be Poindexter's, ghostly hell for the last 50 years, which is him being constantly bullied in school, like literally constantly. And my main issue with this episode is that nobody tries to save Poindexter. Danny ends up fighting to get his body back, and then he traps Poindexter back in his world and even breaks the mirror so that he has no escape out of it. And the reason that it's okay, or the way it's shown to be okay, is that Poindexter ends up making friends with the bullies at the end of the episode, which I don't think is really the right message to kids who are getting bullied. You shouldn't really turn around and just try and make friends with them, because they're the perpetrators, they're the ones who are bullying you, and you shouldn't really have to try and change your personality to fit in with them. And that was pretty much the message of the previous episode. And also you could argue that Poindexter's solution to dealing with bullies is the same as Danny's, and it was actually just a big misunderstanding. But yeah, I don't know. I think overall the episode is a good one, and I do like the way it actually took the way Danny was using his powers seriously, because as you heard earlier in this Thoughts per episode, I was actually a little concerned about that. Also, before I forget, I do want to mention that Poindexter at one point proclaims that Danny is the Halfer, and that which is a terrible name, but it means that he's half human, half ghost, and that ghosts of Ghost World have been talking about him, and I don't remember if this ever comes up again. Anyway, we are a quarter of the way through season 1, and we are 20 minutes into this video, so I think I'm going to call it there, and I will see you in part 2 of what I guess will be a 4-part series on season 1. And yeah, it's Danny Phantom. He's a phantom. Let me know if you watched this show as a kid, or if you are watching for the first time as a grown-up. I sincerely doubt I've got the charisma to convince anyone who I don't personally know to go and watch this show just so that they can listen to this video of me talking about it. But I don't know, if by some crazy sequence of events that is what happened, let me know as well. I could probably use the ego boost. I don't know how long it'll take me to put out part 2, but hopefully not too long, because I'm actually really enjoying this. I'm having a great time revisiting this series. So yeah, I'll see you in the next one.